Croeso I sianel Blaid Llwyd.
I knew you'd be back. You all come back eventually. Why'd you try to run away in the first place? It doesn't matter. Even though you're here, you're going to try and run again. Just stop. Because just like this town, you're only moving in circles.
And so Echo begins. It was 3 years ago today that I released the first Echo video on the channel. It was the summer of 2015 that Howley released the first build. Echo was the second VN I played, and it is the one that really got me into the genre. Thanks, Howley. It really shows what can be done with VNs. I should say here that I'm not going to go out of my way to spoil things, but I'm not going to be too careful either. So if you haven't played Echo, then be warned. Also, that warning on the itch page isn't just for show. Trust me. This isn't really going to be a proper review. Check out NiceKit's channel for a good Echo review. I'll put a link into the description for you so you can check that one out. This is really more of a look at Echo by someone who absolutely loves Echo. And also, 22 months after I finished TJ's route, I can finally show you the credits for Echo. Now, to start off this me yapping about Echo video, I asked Howley if there's anything he wished more people knew about Echo, and he said this. Something that does come to mind, and this leans more towards a behind-the-scenes bit of info rather than lore, are the intentions I had behind the VN. As a whole, the community is very supportive and enthusiastic about Echo, but I've noticed a small but consistent concern amongst some readers. What I have wanted people to know is I never intended to hurt people with Echo. I think some felt there was a bait and switch, or they somehow derived pleasure from crushing hope and happiness in each route. Rather, and this might sound a bit selfish, I didn't think much of the reader while writing. I followed the story where it took me, especially in TJ's route. I tried to tell the stories in ways that felt natural, and due to the nature of Echo, things naturally went bad. In fact, I cried while writing the endings for both Leo and TJ because they definitely did hurt me in a way. I derived no pleasure from how they ended. As for the VN feeling like a bait and switch, that was not the intention either. However, the VN did evolve away from romance horror to a horror focus less than a year into writing it. I know the feeling of consuming media that hurts, and oftentimes that's good, that can really leave an impression and make one think. Where if caught in a notably bad mental situation, they can affect someone to a degree that the author didn't intend. This is why I've written content warnings for Echo. I do hope that this helps those who know they aren't in the best position to read something potentially distressing and can avoid Echo until they're in a better place. I definitely felt a bit worn after 3+ years of writing it. I can definitely agree with those feelings about the endings. They weren't easy to narrate either. Yet they belong. I'm all about following where the story leads as a writer, and I think it shows in the final product. There's no crunching of gears where the writer forced a sharp turn, and if the ending is a place we'd rather not go, you can see how they fit in. But let's leave a discussion about the ending still a bit later on in this. Something I love about the first 2 days of Echo are the dream sequences. The first day is a good introduction to the characters and lets us know about them. That first dream sequence is a nice, if that's the right word, discord compared to what we've seen so far. It subverts the idea of Hiraeth. Chase isn't drawn back to Echo because of a connection to the land, but instead he's literally changed the place and destined to always be pulled back to the town. You're only moving in circles indeed. Not only Chase, TJ and Jenna came along with him. Carl has already returned and Leo and Flynn never left. Indeed, as a character who returns after who knows how long and meets his end in Echo, assuming we can trust what we're being shown. The second day has a great example of how to get some backstory in properly. Chase's potted history of the town is needed for his project, and it gives the reader a good idea of how Echo came to be and why it's ended up like this. I just love the way it's done. We need this, but it's not done as a horrible info dump. Oh, by the way, Leo, as you know, History of Echo, it's just lovely. You're going to get a lot of this. I just point things out I absolutely love about Echo. And the day also shows us more of the gang's characters and the chance for another disturbing dream sequence as Chase watches that show at Southwest Adventures. Knowing what we know now, is that just a dream? Or is it maybe a memory from one of the smudged copies of past inhabitants? Maybe even Sam? Did something happen in that mine? Something that one of the inhabitants experienced? Maybe even come up in the smoke room? Who knows? But it's just such a different feel to that sequence compared to the Southwest Adventures. And again, we have these variations in tone that are just so good. And it hints that Echo is possibly a much darker place than Chase's memories might suggest. Also, in that dream in the end of the second day, we get a hint of what Sydney was like. He's really an interesting character. He's dead before we start this. He's been dead for years. Yet he's kind of important. It's a bit like if you've seen Twin Peaks, and this is not giving away anything important, Laura Palmer is killed just before the story starts. But she's so important to what happens in a lot of the following episodes, and Sydney is like that. You can see some things being set up in this dream sequence that might go against what other people might think of him. And the third day, when we get to the lake and the argument, that sets up some important things as well. They'll be important through all the routes, not only of how Flynn feels about Sydney's death compared to the others who are more willing to move on, but the fact that TJ may know something he hasn't said or even understood. That's a thread that really runs through TJ's route and Flynn's route, and I think it kind of leads towards the endings we get with both of them. And I'd say that Flynn's need to know what happened there is the core to his character. It's a flaw as well, I think. It's understandable he wants to know what happened to his best friend when he died in the lake, but he still can't let go. And as we play through two of the routes, I get the feeling it may have been better if he had learned to let go and accept Sydney was gone. But anyway, I don't want to talk in detail about the routes because A, that would get really boring, and B, this video would turn into something resembling the bloated Hollywood epic. Yes, this isn't going to be a light fluid cut of an Echo thing. That would be horrible for everyone. And not in a good way, like Echo is a horror. Now, we get different impressions of what's going on in Echo following through each route, which is great planning by Howley. And if you play through everything, I know some people have said, oh, I played through one route, I can't face anymore. Seriously, if you're in the bad mental space, don't do it till you're better. But if you can, it's really worth playing through them all. And then we get different ideas. I mean, we learn things in other routes. And we can go back to a route we played earlier and go, now I understand this. It's really repays rereading. You can tell I didn't script that bit, can't you? It's worth going through Echo again once you played through it. And also with these planning things, I really like the idea of Carl's birthday party being a recurring moment on the Wednesday. It makes sense within the stories. It's one of Leo's ideas for stuff the gang can do together, so it makes sense for it to repeat whatever decision Chase made, or we made, if you prefer it that way, back at the lake. And also, we have this basically one event that we can see from different viewpoints. They're all through Chase's eyes, yet different things that have happened already in the different routes just change things slightly. It's just a lovely way to write one sequence, and we see it from different points of view. Even better is it's the same character. Now, one thing I haven't done to prepare for this video, because I only thought about this a couple of weeks ago, is to replay the whole of Echo very recently. Basically, I haven't had the time to do that. Though a full replay is something I want to do later this year. We are getting the end of Jenna's route, and so Echo will be wrapped up very, very soon. So once that's done, I really want to go back and go through everything again, like I've been talking about, seeing the different things there, and it's just so good. So the things I'm going to be talking about here are mainly, but not completely, things that have stuck with me, different ideas I've got, certain scenes have smacked me around the back of the head when I was reading them and narrating them. So if I don't talk about a favourite scene or a particular idea, a theory that's certainly in the Echo chord, that's why I don't have time to keep up with everything. So this is by no means a definitive look at anything. This is just my look at Echo and things that have made an impression on me and what I think. So feel free to make your own videos if you don't like what I say. I'd love to hear those ideas. So to start, let's talk a bit about Carl's route, since that was the first I finished playing, as it was the first Howley finished writing, because when I started, nothing was complete. Jeez, it's been that long since I started playing Echo. Anyway, we end up visiting the mall in Peyton, and of course we meet Raven, who's the patron side character in this route. From what I remember, he's unlucky in two ways. Obviously we see what happens in the story, but he was a patron side character, and if I remember correctly, Howley and the team lost contact with the guy who wanted that character in there not long after they set up the initial idea of Raven, and they couldn't go back and check on anything. So he's kind of an odd one. This is what he's like, but okay, well, now we're left developing this character. It's quite strange. But also, he's so unlucky within the story. I mean, all he really does is decide to hang out with Chase and Carl at the mansion. Then he stays there while Carl goes for his job interview, and then they go to the lake, and things don't go well there. And poor Raven just ends up getting sucked into this nightmare just from being in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's just a classic example of that. So I know he's a bit of a divisive character, but honestly, I have to feel sorry for him as far as that goes. And Carl, I find, comes over one of the characters inspiring the most sympathy out of pretty much everyone we meet, especially when Chase takes him for his job interview. It really shows us how bad his anxiety can be. And most of us have probably been through a job interview at some point, so we can really relate to that. And I have to say, at least Carl looks good when he's dressed up for a job interview. And like a certain voice actor I could mention. And for someone who games as much as Carl, I think it's kind of appropriate that when the gang is trapped inside the mansion, they have to do something specific to advance to the next level, so to speak. There's also green herbs around the place. I wonder if the entity trapping them in the mansion and affecting their perceptions so they see what it wants them to see is just it tapping into Carl's memories of gaming, his thoughts and games, and it's playing a game with them. Or is it just Howley having some fun? Either way, I think it's a really interesting way to do things, and it kind of plays around with these ideas that, oh yeah, we're just playing a game, and we're kind of gaming when we play a visual novel, making our choices, but there's something else going on there as well. Of course, the opposite of fun is what we learn of James Hendricks I in this route, both in what Carl's mother found and Chase later finds in the crawl space, and what we get revealed later. Hendricks I think, is probably fair to say a bigger waste of food than Hendricks III, which is really saying something. It also sets up the bad ending for Carl's route, which we'll get to a bit later. I can't help wondering if the illusory mansion is based off Hendricks' memory of his house. But if that's the case, and it may not be, it's just my idea, wonder where the cabin comes from. John Begay, maybe? Or is it a place the Hendricks family to live when they first moved to the area? Either way, it's a very atmospheric setting for this section. And that whole idea of seeing the fire outside and figures moving, it conjures up some great mental images, and it's honestly a little disturbing feeling you're trapped in this cabin with something like that outside, just glimpsed. Always just getting a glimpse of something is far more scary than seeing the full-blown monster outright. Of course, when we're back in this mansion cabin scenario, it sets up some interesting things as well. You know, we know that what we think of the real people are more like smudged copies of the real ones. They're not the actual ancestors of Carl and Jenna. There's something else going on there a bit. And also they do hint there's something else there, a deeper layer. I think of it as being some kind of ancient eldritch horror. I think that's the one that's controlling everything that we see and hear. And we can't relax for the next hour and watch what's going on. Sorry, I couldn't resist an Outer Limits reference there. And that's the scariest thing. We don't know that what we're seeing or what we're seeing through our characters' eyes is real. I think this whole eldritch horror is probably why the Masaita avoided the area. They knew there was something there that should be left alone. And of course, if you've seen the smoke room and the map, yeah, they knew about it for a long time. And also the idea that it's something buried, maybe? Is Hendricks the first responsible for everything that happens in Echo? He'd created the mine. Did one of his miners dig too deep? There's hints in the smoke room as well as Echo that there are problems in that mine. And I kind of like the feeling that that's what caused the problem. There's something there they should have left alone, but they went digging and found it. I don't know if we'll ever know, but a good story doesn't have to explain everything, especially in this genre. And speaking of not explaining, I actually really like how Carl's bad ending goes. If I remember right, Howley's computer exploded or something not long before that update was due out, and he had to write it all again from scratch in a pretty short period of time. So I don't know exactly what we lost. I'm not sure if Howley remembers exactly. But I like that last scene so much, as far as I can actually like a bad ending. Now, I know Howley hadn't seen Ghostwatch then, because it came up in conversation once. But the endings of both Ghostwatch and Carl's bad ending remind me of each other in the feeling they generate in the viewer when they watch it. With Echo, the mansion is in flames, Hendricks' spirit or whatever is dragged back into the inferno by its victims. Jenna and Raven are injured but out of the mansion with very uncertain fates, and is Carl even there anymore? Or is he just an empty shell being possessed by James? I mean, Chase sees all this and we fade to black. Just perfect. Of course, Carl's good ending is where we get an epilogue, and I think that's where we need it. It's probably the most hopeful of the endings, maybe because it takes place away from Echo. We're back in Pueblo. Even so, we can't be sure how all the cast fared. After all, Leo, TJ and Flynn weren't hidden away during the hysteria. So what did happen to them? We don't know on Carl's route, but at least there's some hope for the future with Carl and Chase. We do know what happens to Leo if you're on his route, though, and that's the one I'm going to talk about now. And there's some really interesting stuff going on in this route. Yeah, okay, I really like Leo, so maybe I'm a little biased towards what I find interesting here, but I think there is. And for one, actually, I disagree with Chase and his thoughts in one section. I don't think Leo has an otter fetish. I read that whole scene of his browser history as him really not being over Chase. And all those searches for Wolf and Otter kissing Cutchin and more kind of helps him imagine he and Chase are still together, that he has Chase with him still. I can understand how that feels, and unfortunately for Leo and the rest, something will be taking advantage of that later. Now we get our first glimpses that Chase is important to the Echo entity fairly early on in the route. I mean, Leo knows he wasn't seeing Chase there. He just thinks, oh, I thought I saw you, but it couldn't have been. But he's not too sure what happened. Duke, on the other hand, is convinced he saw Chase and can't believe that Chase was in Pueblo at the time. So why Shadow Chase and not, say, TJ? Well, since we're not really playing as Chase, I think that's probably why. I think there is some kind of hierarchy of entities going on here, or something that shows up a bit later on if you play TJ's route. And whatever is in Chase's head is outranked by something else. And maybe it's that connection that one has to Chase is why Shadow Chase pops up every so often. Also, Leo's route, I can't talk about Leo's route without mentioning Kudzu. Kudzu. We and Chase get subjected to another mind screw later on in the route as well. If you remember, it's that scene where Leo and Chase are asleep in bed together, and Chase has a dream of being outside, and he's being chased by something. Again, it's unglimpsed, unseen, but so scary due to that. I love these dream sequences in Echo, pretty much all the ones that we come across. Of course, Chase wakes up. He's still next to Leo, who's still fast asleep. Oh, it's okay. It was just a dream. We can relax. But why is there a dried leaf stuck to his foot, though? One that wasn't there when they went to bed. That's just kind of left there. It doesn't get talked about again, but we don't need to hear more about it. Just the fact that Chase found that there is just perfect work. And I know Rod Serling, Twilight's own creator and writer, very highly regarded, also had a similar idea at one point, and again, he didn't do anything with it. Just, it's there. Leave it. Now, once things start going wrong in Leo's route, I actually find it a lot scarier than Carl's. I mean, Carl's is no walk in the park. But in Leo's, we're confronted with something far worse than spirits and Lupin mansions. It's one of the scariest things I can think of. Actual people. People who are scared. Out of all the ghost stories and horror tales, there is little more that's scary than frightened people. Especially when they think that you are somehow the cause of what's scaring them. Duke, Brian, probably most people in Echo at this point. They are as much a threat as any entity. It's as much them as anything else that means Leo and the others have to escape from the town. If they could escape from this pocket dimension that Echo's become. Or is it that their perception has just been played with again? Either way, they're trapped with crazy townsfolk and a malevolent entity. The entity isn't just malevolence, though. It has intelligence, definitely, going on there. It uses Shadow Chase to distract Leo. I don't think Leo's actually crazy. I think he's been manipulated through his weakness. Of course, his weakness is his feelings for Chase. If you want to say he's obsessed, I think he gets there towards the end, but he has very strong feelings for Chase, and thanks to the way Chase broke off their relationship, they never really got to resolve things. And I think this manipulation is actually relevant for one of the endings we get in Leo's route. And then we reach the mines and we get a really good idea of what's going on with Chase. The thing in his mind isn't the main threat here. Of course, we all know who is the main threat, who gets neutralized by who knows what. But we will meet that thing in his mind elsewhere. And Yet we learn there is a way out of Echo. And it's just done so well. I mean, if you think back, the second day on our way to Southwest Adventures, Chase himself tells us the Prescott Railway shut down years ago. The train yard is completely unused and rusting. Or back in Route 65, Leo and Chase think nothing of walking along the train tracks. So, why are we hearing train horns sometimes? It's the way out. The story has another twist of the knife for us, though. Do we see Leo's bad ending or the less bad ending? And the choice most of us would probably want to make isn't the best one. And we don't see what happens after the narration ends in the bad ending for fairly obvious reasons, which you'll know about if you've played through that one. But what is the purpose behind it? If there is a purpose, I mean, it's possible there was just an accident, but let's think about it. Leo can't see what's happened somehow. I suspect that Shadow Chase is with us right at the end there. That it, or even the other entities, manipulating Leo to see just that perfect Shadow Chase, not what's really happened to Chase. I don't think he knows what's happened. From what I read of it, he wouldn't react like that. He can't know. And the fact that Howley leaves things where he does in that ending, I can think of something far worse happening not much long after. Totally malevolent, but that's the entity, I think. Or maybe it feeds off what will happen. Of course, to avoid that fate, then Chase and us have to make a painful decision. So I describe Leo's roots as having a bad ending and a less bad ending, because the epilogue in this ending is sad in a different way. Now, if you've seen the video I made for the end of Leo's route, all the acting I'm actually doing in that last scene is as narrator and Chase. All those emotions you hear in Leo's voice is actually me. I'm just not acting in those ones. Because that really gets to me as well. That's actually why I spent a few hours writing a non-canon continuation for Leo, where he actually ends up in a good place. And that actually started out as a silly joke on the Discord. And then once I read Leo's ending, I realised I had to write the damn thing. Not that TJ's ending is any easier to deal with when we get there either. I really agree with Howley, how writing those endings made him feel. It's hurts the writer, hurts the reader as well, but it's kind of in a good way because we're so caught up with these characters and the writing. It's hard to get kind of kicked out of the mood you're in when Echo, with all the roots, I have to say, which says a lot for the writing. Of course, TJ is probably one of the nicest characters in Echo, and I think it's probably the most difficult to read ending. Of course, as we have with Leo's route and actually Carl's route, that TJ's route sets off, things are going as the characters pretty much expected. It's a decent break back in Echo, they're seeing everyone again, it's nice. TJ gets his hike with Chase, and he obviously enjoys it. But there's still some darkness even this early on. When we're up the top of Echo Canyon, we get that memory of what I assume is another smudged copy. Someone who jumped. They didn't die immediately. Their fate isn't certain, but I doubt it was a good one. I suspect they had a lingering death rather than the fast one they wished for, and that's maybe why we can feel those memories. Then there's a choice Chase gets whether he should shove TJ or do nothing. It seems a little odd at the time, maybe just him being a little playful, but then later when you look back at it from the ending with all the knowledge we have then, there is an aspect of that which could actually make sense. We get some more insights into Sidney here as well, particularly his love of scavenger hunts. It's such an innocent, fun thing the kid could do. It does set up a contrast to other aspects of Sidney we learn about, that he wasn't a super nice kid. Mind you, Chase admits he wasn't always that nice either. It all helps him makes him such a rounded character, even though he is long gone before we ever start playing Echo. And the scavenger hunt is also a great way for the story to move along. It forces the characters to solve the problems that, allegedly, Sidney set up just before his death. Of course, there are enough oddities to show that it can't be Sidney's plan. Someone or something else was involved in this. But it's a neat little mystery that has a mystery within the mystery that, okay, he can't have known this stuff. We need to solve one mystery to try and find out what the other mystery is and who did this, even though it's never entirely set up. Chase's sanity seems to be more in danger in TJ's route than anywhere else, I think. I mean, the whole thing of kissing TJ, the way he overreacts to Julian, who's a pretty inoffensive character. He's a nice guy. And then there's that scene in the motel bathroom. I'm not going to say too much about that. If you haven't played TJ's route and you don't know what scene I'm talking about, it's far better to actually play it in sequence and see that than hear me talking about it. Of course, something in that scene tells Chase he's insane already. And of course, it's where we get the information about the entity. Now, in this scene, we do hear that things have been happening for eons, even the hysteria, which explains why the Masator avoided the area. It's this thing he talks to is way, way older, and I think far more malevolent than the spirit that Chase has in his head. I mean, indeed, it seems to actually scare that smudged Sam, which inhabits Chase. And I think, not only from this one, adding on to what I know elsewhere, but particularly from this scene, I get the impression that it wants these hysterias to happen. Maybe it's so evil, it wants to sow chaos and despair everywhere. Or maybe somehow all these negative emotions kind of fuel the entity. It thrives on this bad stuff, which is kind of linked to my non-canon thoughts on what could happen after Leo's bad ending. Because if that did happen, like I think it would, I'm deliberately not going into detail because it's not nice to think about. This is just my idea. But the entity would get a huge blast of despair and horror and dread of what's going to happen and possibly death. That I really hate this entity. Did I explain that? But even that scene and all I've just talked about there isn't the worst thing that happens on the route by any means. We go back, we have a nice chat with Leo as Chase. Then things really start to go bad. Chase heads out to find out where TJ and Flynn are together. Howdy said how difficult it was to write the ending to TJ's route, and I totally understand where he's coming from with that. I mean, not only do we find the answer that Flynn needs, he finally learns kind of what happened there. But Flynn meets his end in the same place as his best friend. And there's no way to avoid this ending. We've pretty much locked into this for a couple of days. There's hardly any choices we can make. Not that we could change anything anyway. Without knowing, we've been committed to this ending. And you can only realise that in hindsight. Once you ended it, if you look back, you can see how the story has forced us to do this. And I think that's what makes it such a good piece of writing. We don't have dramatic irony in that we know what's going to happen first time through. But having gone through it, we can then see it happening. There may be some kind of fancy literature term for that. I don't know. I'm not an English expert. I just speak the language somewhat. But it is just looking back at it, and I didn't realise what was happening as I read it. But looking back, yeah, that's classic writing. And it's basically, since we, or if you prefer Chase, chose to go and find TJ and we didn't follow Jenna and Leo, we went, maybe TJ went that way instead. As soon as we decided to do that, this ending has been lying in wait for us. There was no way to avoid it. We just made one simple choice, and all this happened. And if I had to nominate one ending from Echo as the best, I think it would be this one. Much as I love Leo, and I have such a hard time with his ending, getting emotional, this one is just so well written and so unexpected. I'd have to give the prize to TJ's ending. And of course, after that great scene at the lake and leaving Echo, we get a scene with Dev and Cam, which is a nice way to set up Arches. And also it hints that maybe Flynn has joined the various ghosts and spirits that infest Echo. And speaking of Flynn, it's time to take a look at his route, which, like Jenna's route, is written by McSkinney. Now, it does have a different feel from the other routes we've done, but they all differ from each other. And I think that's a great way to approach writing these different routes in the same VN. It's a great way to play around with things and have fun as a writer. It seems like Shadow Chase is a bit more active in this route. I mean, even Chase sees him at some points. I have to wonder if he or the other entities manipulate him. Unless, of course, he says thinking of something randomly while reading the script. Are they different, or are they actually the same? Where Shadow Chase is a creation of this entity and has no free will. But anyway, I do wonder if something is manipulating Leo at times, both this route and Jenna's. We see Leo acting, well, not completely out of character, but in a way we don't see in the other routes. Of course, I'm thinking of when he comes into Flynn's house when Chase is there in this one, and there's a scene in the Peyton Wall in Jenna's route. Maybe it's not. Maybe it is. I'm not sure. He certainly seems more normal later. And of course there is a difference in Leo's reactions later in Flynn's route, based on whether you talk to him or Daxton. So maybe if you talk to Dax, not Leo, it opens that window for Shadow Chase to have more of an influence on him. And of course in this route as well, where you get the idea of Ad Astra being a TV show in the Echoverse. From what I gather just reading, I think it's basically an analogue to the original Star Trek series. Certainly feels like that to me. And I love the little touch of having one of the Ad Astra backgrounds, specifically of Amicus's palace, on the TV. And this was, of course, before Ad Astra came out, so not everyone would have got that. It's just Howdy was kind enough to share some backgrounds and sprites and so on for the patrons. So I love that little touch there. It's a lot of fun to see that reference. And there's another little reference I really appreciated in the Sydney watching wrestling, if I can say the word, help, flashback. Thanks, McSkinney, I really enjoyed that. And of course, something Flynn's route is really noted for is the fact it gives us our best look at Sydney and his life in Echo, as well as explaining something mentioned in TJ's. But not only that, it changes our point of view character partway through. I don't know of any other VN that does this. Not that I've read everything, so please don't leave me a whole load of comments saying, oh, you should read this. This will do the same thing. It wasn't original. It's fine. I'll take your word for it. But the reason for this point of view shift is written into the story, of course. And it makes perfect sense. Not only the way the story goes on again, there's no crunching gears with this. Just this has happened. Flynn did this very stupid thing. And we switch our point of view. But also from the writing perspective, if you look at it as an actual writer rather just reading it, that's how we can get the ending we see. You couldn't write Flynn's route in this way without that shift. And the act that causes the shift in perspective, or if in universe, Chase's possessing spirit jumping bodies, it's something it's done before, as we learn in this route. It kind of hints that there is quite a bit of darkness in Flynn. Maybe, again, this is just me theorising. I have not asked anyone on the Echo team about their thoughts on this. But that thing Flynn does, that could be why he ends up with that fate he does. If he hadn't made that decision, if he'd been a bit nicer, maybe things would have gone differently for him. It seems that, like in TJ's route, Flynn's actions and his inability to move on from the past and that strong obsession. I'm going to bounce this back at you, Flynn. You call Leo obsessed. I'm calling you obsessed here. His obsession to know what happened to Sydney. I think that's what leads to both the engine in TJ's route and in Flynn's own route. Of course, we do get more information about the socket monster we've seen and the smudged copies of past inhabitants. There's a great scene almost at the end of Flynn's route that explains quite a bit of stuff, and I love the way it's set up. Of course, I can see how Flynn's ending is a Marmite one. Personally, I think it's great. Actually, I like Marmite as well. But one aspect I like is how the entity who's doing all this to Flynn prevents him from knowing what he most wants to. That's what caused Sydney's death. We get so close to seeing it. Flynn's thinking, I'm going to find out finally. But we can't. It's a kind of subtle form of torture that he gets so close and is prevented from doing it, which again leads towards my malevolence theory of the entity. I mean, Flynn's obviously been manipulated and fed more false images before this happens. See that scene where he thinks he's talking to someone. But nothing at all that Flynn does anywhere in his life that we've seen really justifies the entity's treatment of him and what happens to him. That last scene, though, before we get a little glimpse of Devon Cam, I love that ending. Just, we see this, that line, end. That's great. And of course, it's a young Jenna in that ending, the scene there. And Jenna's route is the last I have to talk about here. And I'm just actually looking at Audacity here. I've been talking now for 42 minutes. If you're still here, well done. I wasn't expecting to go this long. Of course, Jenna's route is the one we have yet to see the ending for, so it's a little harder for me to talk about because I've made so much about the endings of these routes because they've really been massive things. And again, when I mentioned Leo acts out a character in one sequence, again, is there this manipulation going on? Or is it that he's just so annoyed about his ex spending time with the one whose prank caused the breakup between them and the bad breakup they had with them not really sorting things out at the time, even though Jenna is the one who very early on says, rip off the Band-Aid, talk about this. Yeah, I don't think that's guilt, Jenna, but it should be. You're kind of responsible here. I honestly have to say Jenna is probably my least favourite of the main gang here. There's a few things I don't like about her. And we see things in other routes that reappear here as well. I mean, we're in Echo, so it makes sense for events and people to reappear. For example, TJ and Chase and Jenna go on the hike, so that merges TJ's and Leo's routes together. Of course, we know in Leo's route that while Leo and Chase are hanging out, TJ and Jenna go on the hike together. Of course, TJ's route, Chase and TJ go together, no Jenna. So it's a nice way to just link these things together, and makes me wonder if we're going to get a few links to right at the end and maybe hold things together a bit. And we also get the best look at the denizens of Tetanus Alley in this route. It's a good look at how bad things are for some of the people of Echo, and kind of makes the town's eventual death, I suppose you could call it, kind of a worthy one. It's dying, it's not good for people, It's time for Echo to go. And of course, Brian also makes a reappearance in this route. Echo's Most Unwanted reappears here. So the ending for Jenna's route should be released fairly soon after I'm recording this. After I'll be playing through it as soon as I can. It'll be interesting to kind of see the ending to Echo. It's been part of my life for a few years now, just reading it, and it's only going to be the third VN I've read that actually has an ending. All the others are still works in progress. So, Echo, the town that deserves to die. Hopefully Devon and Cameron can write its final epitaph in Arches. And if you haven't realised by now, 45 minutes in, I love this VN. I'd say it's probably in the top 3 for me, and I'm not going to rank any others, so I'll let you wonder on that. And also, without those people from the Echo Discord who said, hey, you should make some videos of Echo, just reading them, I wouldn't have spent hours writing and recording this 3rd anniversary video. Yeah, it was... maybe I'll just do this for a few episodes. I think people will give up fairly soon. No, I have just over 7,000 subscribers now, and I have no idea how that happened. And yes, Echo does have a special place in my heart, just apart from the writing, the characters, and getting to talk with some of the people who worked on it. Great guys, especially. I love talking to Howley. I don't do it often, but he is so nice to chat with on Discord. So, to everyone who works on Echo, the Smoke Room and Arches, all thank you, diolch yn fawr. And before we give the Echo team the credits they deserve, with the Echo credits finally, again a huge thank you to Howley, not only for creating Echo, but for answering my questions and just being a nice guy all round. Also, I have to give a thanks out to Ida Corval, Anubis Silverwind, Brandon Bradford, Samuto, The Beholder, David Taylor, Popot, Grizz, and Evan King for being my top patrons. And as this is a special video, which I'm not going to do all the time, I also want to give a quick shout out to Luke Knudsen, Bubblecube, Ty, Domkey, Dissonance, Cardamon, Coda, Toby, Bashful Wolf, Gummimokas, Mr. NV, Arden Wolfsky, Tranquil Sea, Nox, Xavier, Adrian, Zolt, Gregory Arline, and Taperoff, who are also kind enough to support me on Patreon. I don't know why you all bother, but I'm happy you do. I really appreciate it. And we'll be back to 1915 Echo before long. And I'll see you when we head to Modern Echo in Arches, which hopefully will be next month. Oh, I know you'll be back.
You all come back eventually.